The weather on this Friday was ideal for the 50-minute flight from North Weald to Fenland Airport in Lincolnshire. The previous few days, the weather had been showery, cloudy and gusty, and these conditions returned the following day, but I suppose it's only to be expected in the UK in September. The reason for the flight was to deliver the aircraft to Fenland Airport to have a few engineering jobs carried out, as the engine's now done around 650 trouble-free hours. This work is really preventative maintenance. The 84-mile flight took about 45 minutes, taking the route shown on the Sky Demon chart. I could have taken the slightly shorter route to the west side of Stansted to save 10 minutes, but I was in no hurry and Fenland doesn't open until 9. The light breeze favoured runway 02 and I made a right turn out towards Chelmsford. The air was very smooth and I managed to fly hands-free for most of the flight. The following cockpit view shows my normal cruising setup at 2,600 RPM, giving 110 knots airspeed roughly. I find the aircraft is much easier to trim at these settings and maintain its altitude without the need for constant retrimming. The visibility was well in excess of 20 miles, Stansted Airport being about 10 miles away at this point, but it's usually not that easily seen from here. I've circled Andrewsfield on the chart and the video, as well as Rain Hall Farm Strip, which was directly on my track. A few minutes after passing overhead rain, RAF Wethersfield can be seen to the left of the aircraft, about 7 miles away. RAF Wethersfield opened in 1944, being used by the RAF and United States Army Air Force during World War II, and it closed in 1946, reopening in 1951 as a result of the Cold War. In 2025, the site is now used to house around 800 asylum seekers. Here I'm approaching Newmarket, climbing to reach 3,000 feet. During World War II there was a fully grassed airfield at Newmarket, which opened in 1939 and closed in 1945, operating both Vickers Wellingtons and Short Stirlings bombers, which when fully laden would have needed all of the available grass to get airborne. The inset 1942 image of RAF Newmarket on a target dossier of the German Luftwaffe clearly shows the layout of the World War II runways. I had a basic service from Cambridge Radar from just north of Haverhill, and they told me to report at Newmarket. The Sky Demon chart shows the extended runway centre line, and Cambridge Radar gave me traffic information for the passage across. As usual, they asked me to report north of Beam Cambridge Airfield, and once past, overhead Waterbeach. The inset CAA chart shows the runway at Cambridge, and at this point I'm north in line with the extended centre line position shown by the aeroplane icon. Once past north of Cambridge Airport, Waterbeach is easily identified by the 1940s built disused Waterbeach airfield. After the war ended, RAF Waterbeach had various roles until in 1996 the airfield was passed onto the Royal Engineers Airfield Construction Branch of the Army until its closure in 2012. Then the site was used for housing. From here, overhead Waterbeach, it is usually possible to see the next turning point, the water tower at Willingham, as a white dot in the distance, which is about 7 miles from Waterbeach and is circled in the video. I use SkyDemon as my main navigation aid, but still draw lines on a chart. And it's nice to identify ground features as confirmation, which also encourages me to spend more time looking outside the cockpit. When south of Willingham, I turn to the north and pass over the communications tower and windmill, followed by the water tower in the middle of the fields. From here it's a direct heading to Fenland on a track of about 350 degrees. Being low-lying and flat, this part of the country is prone to flooding and has an extensive system of canals, dikes, sluices and pumping stations to manage excess water. The Old Bedford River is an artificial channel constructed to partially divert the waters of the River Great Ouse and was built between 1633 and 1637. Followed by a second drainage channel completed by 1652 named the New Bedford River. You can see both in the video almost parallel to each other and straight. My photographs here shown of the Bedford Rivers were taken some years ago flying south, returning from Gary Cottrell's strip at Denver after an annual permit renewal. The next video clip is part of a late 2024 flight taken from above Willingham looking north after some days of particularly heavy rainfall. As seen in the 2024 video, the area between the two Bedford rivers acts as a large washland which holds floodwater when the river channels can't cope with the volume of water in them. At this point, about 35 minutes into the flight, the oil pressure gauge was displaying the lowest it had ever shown in the cruise, but without any change in indicated oil temperature or cylinder head temperature. Being about 20 miles from Fenland, I concentrated on the low oil pressure and abandoned the video taking just in case this issue turned serious during the remaining 12 minutes of flight time. During previous flights in the summer of 25, I had noticed a slight general reduction in oil pressure, and this was one of the things I wanted Skycraft to check out. In the past I had fitted replacement oil pressure sender unit and a new gauge, but never replaced the oil pump, so I was optimistic that this low oil pressure issue could be remedied by replacing the oil pump, sender, gauge or all three. Skycraft checked the sender and gauge, which were both okay, so they fitted a new oil pump. But even with the new oil pump, during extended ground runs, the oil pressure couldn't be maintained at tick over revs. The next course of action was to have the 650-hour engine stripped down and the bottom end inspected for wear. But unfortunately, once stripped down, significant bearing wear and fretting of the crankcase was found. I decided rather than sending the engine back to Australia for a complete bottom end overhaul, I would purchase a new Generation 4 engine as there was one ready in Australia for shipping before Christmas 2025. At least the aircraft was tucked away in a hangar until I collected it in March 26 with my brand new engine and a new permit ready for the flying season. As this was a new engine with only the test flight hour, rather than video the return journey, I decided to give my full attention to monitoring the engine for the 1 hour flight back to North Weald. The engine performed flawlessly, especially at low revs during the long taxi to park after landing at North Weald. This video was made in September 25, including the commentary for the flight to the point where the low oil pressure became an issue, with the last part of the commentary completed in mid-April 26, having completed 5 hours on the new engine.